Welcome. I'm Sebastian Mahfood, and you're listening to WCAT Radio, the on-air wing of En Route Books and Media, bringing you the dulcet sounds of Catholic wisdom.
Hi, this is Dr. Cynthia Toolin-Wilson with Don DeMarco. We're going to talk about the book How to Flourish in a Fallen World on this segment of Author to Author. Don, would you like to start with a prayer?
In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. Mary, seat of wisdom, pray for us.
Pray for us.
Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Holy Spirit. Amen.
And hello to all my listeners.
Pardon?
I'm saying hello to all my listeners.
Oh, yes. Hello, listeners.
They're out there.
Yes, I'm sure they are. And all of your readers, too. Usually when we go through a book, you would give us a nice overview of how to flourish in a fallen world.
Yes, I use the word flourish, and I realize that for a lot of people, they're simply trying to survive, try to make both ends meet. So the idea of flourishing seems either ambitious, out of reach, idealistic. But I like the word flourish. The word is derived from Latin and French, and it means to bloom, like a flower blooms, a flower flourishes, that we can bloom, we can be everything that we should be, that kind of thing. Now, Cardinal Sarah has written a wonderful book that came out just last year, 2019, called The Day is Now Far Spent. And that's kind of a bit of a gloomy title. Things are not so good in the world these days, especially in the Catholic Church. And the day is now far spent. There's not much light left, not much time left. Things are getting urgent. But nonetheless, he is a very hopeful person, and he loves the word flourish. So I'm happy to see that. I'm sure he hasn't read How to Flourish in a Fallen World, but, for example, he says, he bemoans the fact that people have rejected God, who ought to be the treasure and source of all human flourishing. So we can flourish with God. He says elsewhere in his book, our humanity attains the fullness of flourishing by accepting the gift of its sexed nature while cultivating and developing it. Of course, he's very critical of this idea that there are not two sexes, there are many sexes, and the sexes change, and maybe there's an infinite number of sexes, so marriage is out, motherhood's out, fatherhood's out. And he is saying that God made us male and female, and we're not going to be able to flourish unless we acknowledge and affirm and develop the kind of being that God made us, the kind of sexual being. Because flourish, having to do with blossoming and blooming, has to be connected with roots. And what Cardinal Sarah says we've done in our world is we've cut ourselves off from our roots, and we expect to bloom. He also says it is of capital importance here to rediscover the notion of human nature as the condition for the flourishing of freedom. There are other places in which he uses this word flourish, so I am kind of happy to know that this wonderful book by Robert Cardinal Sarah keeps referring to the possibility we still have, even though we're living in a dark age and a fallen world, of actually flourishing. Yeah, you're familiar with Cardinal Sarah's book, I assume. The Day is Now Far Spent. In going over my book, How to Flourish in a Fallen World, I was thinking of how to represent the book in a point-by-point kind of way. And I began thinking that we could organize like a 5-step program to help people who don't want to be simply another casualty in a fallen world, but hope for achieving something better and more productive in their life, and possibly even flourishing. So I have 5 points that all begin with the letter I, to make things simple, I guess. We begin with what I call inspection. We could also use the word investigation. We want to look around and assess things. It's in medicine it's called diagnosis. The doctor examines you. He diagnoses what is good, what is not so good. In the world of academia, we talk about examination. The students are examined. And the computer, in computer language, we talk about scanning. The computer scans everything. So we take a careful look at everything we can look at. We look at the situation around us. We read newspapers and magazines and watch television, listen to the radio, read good books, go to mass, hear sermons, and so forth. And we keep an open mind, and we just try to look at everything in the surveyable landscape with the purpose of evaluating what we find. So that's the first step, with an open mind to look at things like the computer scans and the teachers examine their and so forth. The next step is identification. So we want to distinguish between the good ideas and the bad ideas. Now, when we do this intellectually, we're operating on the same kind of system that our immune system operates. There's another good word beginning with letter I. And I know you've been feeling a little bit under the weather these days, but I'm happy to know that your immune system has restored your health, at least so that you can be a very good hostess. So the second step, we identify the good ideas and distinguish them from the bad ideas. We need good ideas because they conform to our nature, our being, and obviously they're beneficial. The bad ideas, they're not 100% bad. Otherwise, they wouldn't have any standing. They wouldn't have any appeal. They have to be a little bit connected with the truth. But the problem is they're incomplete. They're deficient. They lack wholeness. They leave something vital that's out. For example, pleasure without conscience, and choice without a good, and will without reason, power without restraint. Because something is a choice and something is powerful and pleasurable, this is a basis for attraction. But they're missing something. They're missing something. So all in all, they're really a bad idea. When the great Russian novelist Dostoevsky sent in his manuscript for Crime and Punishment, he sent an accompanying note to his publisher summarizing this very, very long story in just a few words. He said, "This is the story of a university student whose mind is infected with incomplete ideas that float on the wind." Now, this is a wonderful summary of one of the great books in Western literature. Raskolnikov, the university student, is aware of his will to power. He's kind of a Nietzschean type of student. But he doesn't accept restraint or respect for other people. He commits 2 horrible murders, and of course he's punished for this, and he finally comes around to realize that you can't live by will alone. It's an incomplete idea, and it's a bad idea. Okay, so we identify and distinguish the good ideas from the bad ideas. The good ideas are ideas that have integrity. They have to do with truth and justice and freedom and goodness, and they're uncompromised. They're very serviceable. They're very, very beneficial. Okay, the next step is I call isolation. Once we recognize the bad ideas, we isolate them so that they don't harm us. It's like the computer uninstalling a virus. And our immune system is amazing. It's one of the great marvels of nature. we have, each one of us, roughly 100 billion immunological receptors that have the natural capacity to distinguish between the self and the non-self. So it's ready to distinguish between things that belong to us and things that don't belong to us. So it recognizes harmful invading substances, and it takes action, either to isolate them or destroy them. So our immune system has an instinctive capability of not only distinguishing between the good ideas which belong to the self and the bad ideas that are harmful to the self, but it's able to isolate or destroy the bad ideas, which is just amazing. And as I say, this is the third step on the way to flourishing. We have to exile the bad ideas so that they no longer are in a position to harm us. Okay, so we've gone from inspection to identification to isolation. And now what about the good ideas? Well, I have the word inclusion. So we want to affirm the good ideas. And in thinking about this, an old 1940s tune with lyrics by Johnny Mercer was dancing around in my head. I don't know if you remember this, but I love the words. You've got to accentuate the positive, eliminate the negative, latch on to the affirmative, and don't mess with Mr. in between. You remember that?
Yep. I do now, yeah. Once you said that.
Yeah, this Johnny Mercer is one of the great lyricists of all time, and that's so we even find it in popular music sometimes, the importance of including what's good and excluding what's harmful. Okay, so we've come a long way now on the road to flourishing. Step 5, I call incorporation. So we have inspection, identification, isolation, inclusion, and incorporation. So it's not enough just to identify and affirm the good ideas. We have to incorporate them into our lives. And how do we do this? Well, 3 important things: intelligence, virtue, and grace.
Yeah.
So intelligence gives us light so we can see what we're doing, and virtue gives us strength, and grace gives us our connection with God. So now we're in a pretty good position to flourish. We can't flourish if we don't see things the way they are, and if we don't have virtues to keep us strong and bind us to the needs of others. Of course, we need charity, and we can never underestimate the importance and the good effects that can be brought about by flourishing or being able to go through these steps. I think of Shakespeare's comment in The Merchant of Venice. I love this little sentence. He says, "How far that little candle throws his beams, so shines a good deed in a naughty world."
Yeah.
That kind of sums up both how to flourish in a fallen world and Cardinal Sarah's "The day is now far spent." Don't underestimate the power of good. And don't be discouraged if the road to flourishing takes a little bit of while and a little bit of effort. So shines a good deed in a naughty world. So we have a fallen world, a darkened world. And I guess it's been a naughty world for some time. I mean, here's Shakespeare talking about a naughty world, and don't underestimate the power of the good. So does that? I guess that might make sense, I suppose.
It does.
If I had a blackboard, this is kind of sometimes, being a teacher, I think of students and blackboards and making things as memorable as possible. Inspection, identification, isolation, inclusion, incorporation, and this is much better than doing nothing. This is what we should all be doing. We want to flourish, which means we want our life to bloom. And of course we need God. And D.H. Lawrence, who has a wonderful way with words, has expressed basically this same idea that I'm trying to explain. Although he's not really including God, but it's easy enough to bring God back into the picture. He says, we are bleeding at the roots because we are cut off from the earth and sun and stars. Love has become a grinning mockery because, poor blossom, we plucked it from its stem on the tree of life and expected it to keep on blooming in our civilized vase on the table. That's very dramatic, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
We have isolated ourselves. We have we believe that we are so extraordinary that we can take our own life without connections. It's sort of an ego madness. But at the same time, we can appreciate the foundation for this kind of egoism because of the technological genius that is apparent in the modern world. We consider what we can do technologically, and therefore we're ready to believe in progress. But technological progress does not mean moral progress, and I think what's happened is that we fall for the illusion that we can be self-sufficient, that technology will bail us out, technology will take care of us, we don't need anything else. G.K. Chesterton, who has such a marvelously realistic mind and such a wonderful way with words, he says, as enunciated today, progress is simply a comparative of which we have not settled the superlative. So progress means we're doing something better, but we don't know where we're going. We haven't decided on the superlative. Well, the superlative is a connection with God, and real progress is human flourishing, which is united with God. But we've removed the superlative and fall back on the illusion that things are getting better and better all the time, even though the only thing that's getting better, I suppose, in a sense, although it has its drawbacks, is technology. The technology, the world of the computers is a wonderful world for thieves to enter. And of course, I heard that we have something like 7 million Americans who have had their identities stolen.
Easily.
Simply to get back to a simpler life, which is not, we're not so vulnerable. Speaking of bad ideas that are woefully incomplete, there are two bad things about bad ideas. One is that they're incomplete. They leave out something that is necessary. I mean, it's good to have a left foot, but that's not enough. To walk, you need a right foot too. It's bad if you are missing a leg. So you can't say, "Well, I have one leg." No, well, you need two. You need two legs. A Canadian philosopher, not I, has written this in a published article. Marriage is an archaic institution that has lost its moral force. But if we wish to provide a healthy, loving environment in which to reproduce our species, we'd better think of something quick to replace it. Now, this is something about the state of philosophy in Canada or in North America. He said this a few years ago, and no one has come up with a replacement for marriage yet, although some people are trying. But marriage is fundamental. It's basic. It's irreplaceable. If there's anything wrong with marriage, it's the people who are part of marriage. It's the partners. So we need to fix the people rather than the marriage. It's a very, very basic kind of idea. You go into a shoe store and you try on a pair of shoes, and they're too small.
Right.
And the shoe salesman says, "Well, we have a surgeon who could reduce the size of your feet so that they fit the shoe." And he said, "No, I don't want to have my feet reduced, surgically reduced. It's like the old Procrustes who would cut people's legs down so they fit into the bed that he was carrying." No, you try on a different pair of shoes. You don't tamper with your feet.
Right.
So this is a very simple idea. So there's a disparity between the size of the shoe and the size of the foot. So you change the shoe. You don't change the foot.
Right.
There's a disparity between marriage and the people who populate marriage. I think marriage is a wonderful institution. It's basic. It's unchangeable and irreducible and irreplaceable. You change the people. People have to be more loving. They have to be more giving, more understanding. They have to flourish as human beings. A lot of people think that marriage is just a way of saving tax money. Or I remember an old David Susskind show in which he had several guests who talked about marriage. And no one talked about marriage in terms of marriage. Sean Connery and Diane Cilento were very, very famous people. Sean Connery making the James Bond movies, and Diane Cilento, his significant other, was on the show. And she said, "Well, Sean and I were living together, and we were traveling all over the place on location to make different movies. And then we realized that if we got married, we would get half airfare, because the partner gets half fare. So we decided to get money so we could save on airfare." Well, of course, they got married, but the marriage didn't last. But Susskind went through all of the people on the panel, and they all had the same kind of idea about marriage. It had nothing to do with what marriage is. So we have to understand what marriage really is. And of course, we have trouble understanding what it means to be a man and what it means to be a woman, let alone marriage in this world of gender bendering and the non-recognition of maleness and femaleness. So we have to have the right idea of marriage and the right idea of people. It seems that in our society we're just kind of floating in the air, cut off from the roots. And we're not quite sure what to do. We tried crazy bromides, but nothing seems to work. So very simple, change the shoes, don't change the feet.
Yeah.
Another example of really bad idea, in an issue of The American Psychologist, two authors, male and female, Karl Auerbach and Louise Silverstein, they argue that fatherhood is not a good idea. They write, the article in American Psychologist is called Deconstructing the Essential Father. Deconstruction is in these days, tearing things down and then throwing them out. I'm quoting them. They see the argument that fathers are essential as an attempt to reinstate male dominance by restoring the dominance of the traditional nuclear family with its contrasting masculine and feminine roles. Well, marriage doesn't require male dominance.
No.
Some men can be dominant and some women can be dominant, I suppose, but when they do that, they're not conforming to the nature of marriage. There's nothing within the true essence and nature of marriage that requires dominance or anything of that sort. So what we have to get rid of is the dominance, not the marriage. Right? So what we have to get rid of is the shoes that don't fit rather than get rid of the feet. It's amazing that people don't see this. Get rid of the marriage rather than get rid of the dominance. But if you get rid of the marriage, you still have the dominance, it seems to me. And I suppose the dominance would be worse for men because they wouldn't have the taming factor that the wife represents. There's a recent exhaustive study that came out, out west, Washington State University, I believe, and it shows that one of the major factors in reducing crime is pregnancy. That the husband and the wife are less prone, far less likely to commit crimes when they're married and they have a child. Now they have a realistic focus, the needs of the child and the needs of each other. So, they have a husband and wife who love each other, they need each other, they're married, they have children, they love their children, they have a family. Why get involved in crime? Because that would be injurious to the marriage and to each other.
Sure.
Well, we're getting a lot of bad ideas from the media and from the academic world, from the university world, and that makes things more difficult. But it doesn't rule out the possibility of flourishing. We have to look at the situation and say, as St. Thomas More once said, there's never been such a bad time that a good man cannot live in it. No matter how bad things are, we don't have to fall in line with the badness. We don't have to fall along with the fallen world. There's a way to flourish. Now, fatherhood, my goodness. Blankenhorn has written this wonderful book that fatherhood is the most pressing problem in American society. That fatherhood is essential. We can't do without fatherhood. It's not something that is relegated to the past.
Right.
I'm thinking Maggie Gallagher, whom I met at Princeton University some years ago, has written some wonderful things about fatherhood. Sigmund Freud, among his many bad ideas, did say, "I could not point to any need in childhood so strong as that for a father's protection." Maggie Gallagher wrote a memorable piece in the top-ed page of the New York Times a few years ago. She herself was married and was a single mom raising a child. She says, "Children not only need a father, they long for one, irrationally, with all the undiluted strength of a child's hopeful heart." That's wonderful. I kept seeing that in Reader's Digest and New York Times and reproduced here and there. And I was using that in various talks I gave. Children not only need a father, they long for one, irrationally, with all the undiluted strength of a child's hopeful heart. So point where I think I owe her thank you. So I was able to get her telephone number, and I called her one day, and I got her son, and he seemed unwilling to connect me with his mother. And then the father, she finally married. The father got on the phone, and he said, "Who's this?" and all that. And there was something kind of strange about their reaction. It wasn't, "Who are you?" and "Glad to hear from you," and "What do you want?" And the father said, "Well, we get death threats."
Death threats?
Death threats.
Good.
And I said, I'm a friend of Maggie. We met at Princeton University. I just wanted to congratulate her for the wonderful things she said about the importance of fatherhood. And so Maggie finally got on the phone. It's really that bad. A couple of years ago, I got a telephone call from a friend at a Catholic university in Canada, and she said, "I need your help because I've invited Charlie Rice to be the Paschal lecturer. And Charlie Rice, although he's not talking about homosexuality or even the natural law, Charlie Rice has written some articles as a lawyer explaining the natural law, and the homosexual people here are upset about that. and they are giving me death threats.
Oh, boy.
And I said, I'd like to help you, but I'm on my way to Holy Apostles College to teach a course. But you must get protection. You must call the police, and you must have somebody in the classroom. And she said, I've already done that. It's amazing that people can get away with this. But I think we've got some very, very serious problems in our society, and the bad ideas don't disintegrate on their own. I think people become desperate because you can't really sell a bad idea by using reason and logic, because people will say, "Oh no, you get new shoes, you get new legs, you don't new feet." People. You can't sell a bad idea with reason, so you sell a bad idea through intimidation.
Oh, yeah.
And there's a lot of intimidation going on, and people who live by the bad ideas, so to speak, go along with the intimidation. Another example, Bob Newhart, who's well known as a Catholic, and well known for his comedy and for his television series and for his movies, and he's kind of respected and even beloved, Well, he was invited by Legatus. It's a Catholic group founded by Tom Monahan to give a talk. But the LGBTQ people stepped in and said, no, you can't invite him because he's a Catholic and Catholics are opposed to homosexual actions. And so Bob Newhart did not speak at Legatus. So this is intimidation, not reason. It gets to the point where a Catholic is not supposed to speak to another Catholic, or one Catholic is not supposed to speak under the auspices of some kind of Catholic organization. People get away with this, and of course they're anti-choice. One could argue, but somehow that doesn't come to the surface, and things continue in this kind of way. So I keep writing, and I keep hoping to convince people that maybe the world has fallen a little bit further than they think, but it doesn't mean that the situation is hopeless. But we've got to get going. We need to. We want to flourish. I mean, I think everybody in his heart really wants to be fully human and flourish and love God and be grateful for God's gift. But they're mesmerized by television, by secularism, by immediacy and simplicity. They want things now. They don't want to wait. They don't want to delay. They don't want to grow, really. You can't grow in an instant. So I'm hoping that through the medium of writing, that I can get through and explain to people that good ideas are better than bad ideas, and we have to be connected in two ways. We have to be rooted in our nature, and we have to be connected with God. And one way of we shouldn't be alone. One way that's emphasized in Cardinal Sarah's book of getting out of this problem and rising out of the fallen world we're living in and being united with God is through prayer. So his book keeps emphasizing the indispensable significance of prayer. So early in the book he says, and he's a very warm-hearted person. He says, "Dear friends, you wish to lift up the church." And, he's aware that there are so many Catholics, for example, who want to change the church. They want the church to contraception and abortion and euthanasia. They want women to be priests. They want priests to be married. They want married people maybe to get divorced and remarried. I mean, they call themselves liberal and free. Of course, the Cardinal Sir is not bedazzled by this. He says in his book, if you argue that 2 and 2 are 5, does that mean you're liberal and does that mean you're free? And where do you stop? If you want to if you want to change mathematics, if you want to make 2 and 2 5, well, where do you stop? Maybe 2 and 2 is 105 or 3,000, or where do you go? And you enter this strange abstract world in which you're totally lost and don't know what anything means. At any rate, getting back to Cardinal Sarah, dear friends, you wish to lift up the church? Get down on your knees. That is the only way. If you proceed otherwise, what you will do will not be from God. Only God can save us. He will do so only if we pray to Him. Well, there it is.
Yeah.
We are uprooted and disconnected from God, and that's not a condition in which we can flourish. We need to be connected with our roots and be grateful for the kind of body, the kind of being, the kind of sexual being that God has given us. So it's like being connected to two terminals, and the electric spark can go from God to man, and man back into his roots, and that's the way we flourish. But people say, I can do it myself, thank you. Well, we can't do it ourselves. What we wind up with is the kind of insanity that we see all over the place.
Yes.
I was thinking of John Paul II and how John Paul II has kind of summarized, brought into a single image what Cardinal Sarah is saying in his book. George Weigel, speaking for St. John Paul II, says that the entire papacy of John Paul is a one-act drama involving the tension between the various false humanisms that degrade the humanity they claim to defend and exalt, and the true humanism to which the biblical vision of the human person is a powerful witness. So, how to flourish in a fallen world? There are two kinds of humanisms, so to speak. One's false, and the other is true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The false ones really degrade the very humanity they claim to defend, and the true humanism to which the biblical vision of the human person and a philosophical vision is a powerful witness. If you wanted to summarize the contribution that John Paul made to society, it's trying to help people to understand the difference between the false humanism and the good humanism, the importance of the Bible and the importance of prayer, how to distinguish those, and how to get rid of the false humanism and belong to the true humanism. That's the only way you flourish. I suppose with different language and different images and different kinds of ways of speaking, Shakespeare and John Paul II and Cardinal Sarah and G.K. Chesterton are all saying the same thing. They're saying, look around, distinguish between what's good and what's bad, and choose what's good. That's the basic biblical vision. Mm-hmm. I have set before thee good life and death. Choose life. He says that shows up a few times in the Old Testament. I have set before thee life and death. Choose life. And you choose life, and you will flourish. You choose death, and you will die. Mm-hmm. Cardinal Sarah has a long section in his book about the hatred of man and the hatred of life. And he's aware of the adverse effects of pornography, abortion, euthanasia, contraception. Mm-hmm. We're a society that has come to the point where we actually hate life. I want to read one or two sentences from a Supreme Court, United States Supreme Court decision that nobody seems to be aware of. But 1977, Beale versus Doe, Supreme Court decision. Justice Blackmun, Harry Blackmun, who wrote the Doe v. Wade decision, is back again in the 4 years later, 1977, in Beale, B-E-A-L, versus Doe. So he writes, but the cost of a non-therapeutic abortion is far less than the cost of maternity care and delivery, and holds no comparison whatsoever with the welfare costs that will burden the state for the new indigents and their support in the long years ahead. So it's cheaper to kill them now because they're only going to turn out to be a drag on society and probably be criminals. So let's get rid of them now. They haven't done any of these things yet, but we predict they will. So now, by that calculus, every unborn child should be exterminated because, as Blackmun says, it's cheaper to abort them now. It's cheaper. A simple abortion is far cheaper than maternity care, let alone raising the child. So if our standard is money, then no one has the right to live, because everyone is going to cost a lot of money, and is going to be polluting the atmosphere, and and creating all kinds of problems that the green people will be upset about, if there are any green people left. But this is an odd kind of way of thinking for a Supreme Court justice. You think of supreme and justice, and what you have is the lower end of things. You have radical injustice. Let's kill everybody because it's simply cheaper to abort them now, and not to mention the utter hopelessness. Back in 1927, there was a Supreme Court decision involving forced sterilization, Buck versus Bell. And, the justice who wrote the decision said 3 generations of imbeciles is enough. Yeah. So the United States embarked on thousands of forced sterilizations because they felt that some of these people would continue to be a burden to the state. So let's get rid of them now. Oliver Wendell Holmes wrote the decision. 3 generations of imbeciles is enough. So let's have forced sterilization. That was, of course, overturned later. But there have been some very, very bad Supreme Court decisions. Now, it is disgusting when you have bad ideas being affirmed in very high places, such as the United States Supreme Court. And, of course, here in Canada, we have a prime minister who is intent in expanding euthanasia. There are 6,770 people who have been put to death through euthanasia. It's called MAID. It's a nice acronym, medical assisted death. So it's not such a, as long as you get a good acronym for it, they're really helping people. He wants to expand it. He doesn't want doctors to operate according to their conscience. He spent billions of dollars to promote abortion in other countries around the world. Very difficult to oppose this. It's difficult. I'm happy that there is a publishing house called En Route that is trying very hard to get the message out and working very imaginatively to expand its network. But it's very, very difficult. The world has agreed on a certain kind of attitude and will not give in. But again, we don't want to underestimate the power of God. So I've been doing most of the talking, and I'm getting self-conscious of maybe talking too much. Did you have any questions or thoughts about the book?
Well, I really enjoyed the book. Excuse me. I'm sorry, my voice goes in and out. When I was looking at the bad ideas that can be building blocks for the culture of death, that really resonated with me. I think we've had discussions about that before when you were working at Holy Apostles. But talking about the will as absolute, society as perfectible, pleasure as paramount, and adversity as unbearable, and how these these bad ideas are the underlying structure for the essay that you write after that. So I don't know if you'd like to speak about that for a little bit, but I thought that was really an important section.
I guess, smoking cigarettes, one could say, is a bad activity. But it's not 100% bad because it offers people pleasure. So, I listen to these old-time radio shows, and most of them are presented under the auspices of various cigarette companies. And they present cigarette smoking as 100% good. And, of course, they emphasize the pleasure, how quick and how smooth and easy on the draw Lucky Strikes are, and how mild they are, and how wonderful they are. And take the 30-day test, and you'll find that there's no throat irritation. Well, there's no throat irritation once you're deceased.
Right, that's true.
And it's sort of interesting to listen to this nonsense. Of course, that's all illegal now, because Surgeon General and others have realized that the adverse effects of smoking, which include death, far outweigh the passing pleasure. So here's a case where we have an activity that's promoted by millions of dollars, promoting pleasure without health. You smoke these things and you will die sooner. Of course, they leave out the negative part, but it's a bad activity when you balance the positive against the negative, but it has a leg to stand on, so to speak. So it has a basis for advertising. So the devil has a basis for advertising because ideas that are bad ideas, they're not 100% bad ideas. They have something going for them. Pleasure is nice. It's nice to exert your will, and that kind of comfort is wonderful and all that. But what about the rest of the story, the rest of the idea? So getting back to my 5-step program, we have to inspect and inspect with an open mind and look at all sides of things. Viktor Frankl talks about the negative effects on a person's mental health if he has a lot of bad ideas rolling around. He coined the expression noogenic neurosis. Noogenic comes from the Greek. It means something generated by bad ideas. Noos, noesios, noos. Aristotle famously said God is a thought thinking a thought. Noesis, noesios, noesis. God. So we have gnoseology and nous. We have a few words from the Greek. So nous means knowledge. The knowledge can generate a neurosis if it's bad knowledge, and it enters your head and you live by it. You can become kind of weird. You develop a noogenic neurosis because you've had bad ideas in your head. So not only do bad ideas affect your life and prevent you from flourishing, but they compromise your mental outlook, your mental health. You have kind of an intellectual neurosis, and so you begin promoting crazy ideas and acting kind of strange. Then somehow there were enough people who were like this that it kind of continues. It's interesting to note the contradictions in society, because for some people they might go along with the craziness for a while, and then they notice, well, wait a minute, there's something strange about this. For example, if you discourage a person from committing suicide, you're a humanitarian, and there's a lot of money that's offered by governments to assist in people who, through telephone hotlines or whatever, to discourage people from committing suicide. And yet, if you discourage a person from having an abortion, you're a fanatic.
Yes.
Right?
Good point.
I think some people will look at this in their examination step, in their inspection stage, and they say, wait a minute, that's strange. If we live in a culture of death, wouldn't we want people to commit suicide? If we want to expand the frontier of euthanasia, wouldn't suicide fit right into that plan? But why do we discourage people from committing suicide? And we award people with humanitarian medals for this. And yet, if they dare even pray outside of an abortion clinic, they're called fanatics and sometimes arrested. That doesn't hold together, does it? I mean, there doesn't seem to be any unifying principle that would affirm both those sides of the contradiction. And they might say, I think I'm being exploited by nonsense. There must be something better than this, something that doesn't something that's not an affront to my intelligence, And that's a beginning. Maybe it's just getting your toe wet in the water before you jump in, but it could be a start.
Yes.
Now, some of these ideas are offered under the most congenial and affirmable auspices. Carl Reiner is a very likable person. He's a comedian. He's a director. He's very much involved in the entertainment business, television, the movies, and even his son is very much involved. And I enjoy Carl Reiner. I think he's hilarious and he's imaginative and all of that. And in a moment of philosophical reflection, he says, we only need one commandment. Of course, he comes out of a Jewish background. We need only one commandment: don't hurt anyone. Now, that sounds attractive and appealing in a sense, I suppose, to many people. Don't hurt anyone. Well, that's right. Don't hurt anyone. We only need one commandment. Don't hurt anyone. But notice how woefully incomplete it is. Now Christ says, love everyone. Love your neighbor. Yeah. Christ begins with something we should do, not something we should avoid.
Yeah.
So avoid. You can't begin a moral philosophy that's realistic in the negative. You can't begin something by not doing something. And that's not an origin. That's not a fountainhead of inspiration. Don't hurt anybody. Yeah, well, don't hurt anybody. Sure, but where do you begin? What do you do? You begin with love, and if you have love, then you don't hurt anybody. But simply by not hurting anybody, look at just consider what's left undone. How about caring for people? Well, that doesn't fit into don't hurt people. So sometimes a bad idea can be presented in an attractive way by a person who is respected and trusted, and people are kind of mesmerized. I guess we have to be kind of tough. We have to say, well, wait a minute. I know you're a nice guy and I enjoy your comedy, but that doesn't mean you're a wise Socratic philosopher. Let me just examine this a little bit, because I'm still on this first step of my road to flourishing. I want to investigate and inspect and examine, and this doesn't make any sense. I mean, we need something proactive. We need to know what to do, and we love. Right. So bad ideas can be easily sold. When I was very young, and my peers and I were getting ready for our first confessions. There was a silly little rhyme that went around. Bless me, Father, for I have sinned. I stole a banana and ate the skin. And we thought that was stupid, but bless me, Father, I have sinned. I stole a banana and ate the skin. But this is what society is doing. Instead of enjoying what should be enjoyable, they're trying to enjoy what should be discarded.
Yeah.
We throw away the marriage, and there's really nothing left to enjoy. We enjoy an illusion, I suppose.
Right.
So this is like our epitaph. what we thought was a silly joke turns out to be a kind of epitaph for society.
Yeah.
I have sinned, but not really. I mean, what is a sin? I ate the skins. I threw away the banana.
Yeah.
So I threw away God. I threw away the substance of life. I threw away my nature. I threw away my sexuality, and I have just the skin left, which is indigestible and not nourishing, alone not flourishing. So there we are.
Yeah. Yeah. Good point.
My philosopher colleague who talked about how marriage is an archaic institution. He gets this kind of thing published, and he has a readership and all of that. I don't know. I guess a lot of people are preoccupied with earning a living and surviving, and they have left little room for philosophical thinking and assessing what's going on and saying, wait a minute, I'm being drawn into something that is very, very, very dangerous and not good for me. And at the same time, it's really preventing me from tending to the needs of my soul and flourishing, being connected with God. I've been kind of cut off from my roots and cut off from my God, and where I am, I'm kind of floating in space. Like those criminals in Superman 2, they were just kind of floating around in space, nowhere to go. They have no roots, no direction, just floating around. It's kind of a horrible kind of punishment to be deracinated and atheized. So as we approach the 7:00 mark, you must have some more comments.
Well, just excuse me.
I think did you mention that your president wrote a nice blurb on the back cover?
Yes, I was just about to do that. Father Peter Kooser is a missionary of the Holy Apostles. He was actually one of my seminarians about 20 years ago. And he was academic dean, the job that I now have here at Holy Apostles. And he was just recently promoted to president rector. And he wrote a nice little blurb about Dr. DeMarco's book, which I will read to you. Don DeMarco, in his How to Flourish in a Fallen World, provides direction in how to navigate through what Benedict XVI once called our painful between state. As human beings, we aspire to and are born for a more perfect world that only can be fulfilled in the life to come. These heavenly aspirations inspire us, after the example of the saints, to pattern our earthly existence after heavenly realities, while being aware of our proclivity to sin and that this world is passing. This book gives the reader intellectual incentives to improve our earthly existence and at the same time helps to temper the reader's enthusiasm to improve this world by its clear awareness of our fallen state. I think that's a very
That's very nice. Please extend my sincere thanks to Father Kooser. I'm sure you will see him.
Yes.
Please extend my thanks to him for saying that. That's very kind, and I hope accurate.
It is, I think. So yes, so this is a very nice book, and I would invite all of our readers to consider buying it. There's 3 sections in it, and the meaning of our morality, the problem with our present culture, and the means for flourishing in a fallen world, much of which Dr. DeMarco has covered in this hour-long interview. But I would strongly suggest anyone buy this book and read through it. It's very good, and it really does describe the situation that we are in the world today. Thank you, Don, for letting me interview you.
Thank you. Should we close with a little prayer as we begin?
Yes, please. Yes.
Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death. Amen. Seat of wisdom. Pray for us.
Pray for us.
Thank you again, and please give our regards to all of our friends at Holy Apostles.
I will do so. Take care.
Thank you.
Yes,
and I hope you'll be 100% healthy very soon.
I hope so, too. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Hello, God's beloved. I'm Annabelle Mosley, author, professor of theology, and host of Then Sings My Soul and Destination Sainthood on WCAT Radio. I invite you to listen in and find inspiration along this sacred journey we're traveling together to make our lives a masterpiece and, with God's grace, become saints. Join me, Annabelle Mosley, for Then Sings My Soul and Destination Sainthood on WCAT Radio. God bless you. Remember, you're never alone. God is always with you.
We hope you enjoyed the program and will join us back for another show on WCAT Radio. This is Sebastian Mahfood. Good day.